for the Roanoke Conference, which is a gathering of conservative and moderate to conservative people from around the state, very policy heavy, very wonky. And behind, you can see the Roanoke Conference has gained some protesters. What they're protesting, they're not really sure. They don't like the president, and they don't like law enforcement. That much is clear. The rest is, well, they're not a young crowd, so I think they're reliving some of their hippie radical youth. And God bless them. This is America. Everyone gets to protest and yell shame, shame, shame at Ari Hoffman. Ari, do you feel shame?
Oh, lots of shame. It's so shameful. So shameful right now. All kinds of shame everywhere. Yeah. Wait a second. They're yelling shame at a Jew? What? By the way, if you ask them what they're protesting, I think you would get like 10 different answers.
Yeah, I mean, it's Trump, Trump, Trump.
Yeah.
Ice, ice, ice.
Nice, baby.
Yeah. Now, on a serious note, there was another shooting this morning. An armed protester confronted law enforcement agents. This was not here. This was back in Minnesota. And the law enforcement agents, they shot and killed the armed insurrectionist. But this is more generic. Their signs say ICE. Their rhetoric says Trump. But they have very little idea what's going on inside the convention hall, where it's a very wonky and policy-focused conference, as it's always been. Talking about things like tax policy, talking about things like affordable housing. I don't think these protesters have any idea.
You know the irony of this? The panel going on inside right now is exceeding executive authority.
Right.
And they're discussing whether or not President Trump exceeds executive authority to be concerned about if the next president, if they're a Democrat, could do the exact same thing. So the irony of them showing up right now is very entertaining because it's being discussed. They don't want to discuss those issues.
Right.
Like the stuff Joe Biden did where he declares all parents terrorists because they objected to curriculum. They don't want to have those honest discussions.
No, and it gets very in the weeds. I mean, you have to know the Fourth Amendment to the U.S. Constitution. You have to know the 16th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution. The law around issues like executive authority and whether ICE can use an administrative warrant, a kind of bureaucratic tool versus a judicial warrant. You have to know the law. You have to know the public policy. And these protesters clearly aren't operating at that level. So aside from what's going on here and the kind of performative theater of these protests, it's been a very busy week at the Capitol in Olympia. As you know, the four major tax increase proposals that are working their way through the Capitol right now are kind of, at least it's getting clear what the options are going to be for the progressive left to raise taxes in the state of Washington. Of course, the governor remains most committed to a new state income tax. He calls it a millionaire's tax, but we all know, probably by court action, the tax would eventually be applied to all Washingtonians. Secondly, there's what they call the wealth tax, which is an expansion of the existing newly passed state capital gains tax. Trick with that one is it would extend and expand the capital gains tax to unrealized capital gains. So it wouldn't just be a tax on a profit you make from an investment. It would be a tax on things you own that you haven't sold and haven't made a profit on. The third one is the so-called head tax. That's House Bill 2100. That's the expansion of the failed payroll tax increase from the city of Seattle that would go statewide under this bill. A disastrous tax policy that ended up in fewer dollars coming in to the city of Seattle than projected, because the companies that had the jobs that would have qualified to pay the tax moved the jobs out of the city. And last, the increase to property taxes. The old idea we've heard that would increase the automatic rate of increase on property taxes from 1% a year to 3% a year would have the compounded effect would be a major increase in property taxes. All four of those tax proposals hurt working people in Washington. And we're talking about tax policy inside. So there's more to tell, but know that as the left's ideas clarify and they have to commit to these bad ideas, all they're left with is cheap theatrics and people who don't even know what they're talking about. This is a sign that common sense is winning. I'll talk to you again next week. Until then, stay strong, be well, and ignore the gal with the loudspeaker.